So a few weeks ago, I ran across a video from a congressman from Oklahoma, and he was talking to a group of his constituents about wasteful government spending, and you guys can see a clip here.
I was in a line, and there's a story behind this. I'm in line, and I'm buying all my groceries, and I'm at a fairly nice area. It's called Crystal City. It wasn't in D.C. because in D.C. I've been driving around looking for a Safeway because my map would show Safeways. I didn't realize all the Safeways was underground because everybody walked to them. I was looking for a big parking lot like we have around here. Anyways, it was funny. I finally found a Safeway. So I'm in Crystal City and I'm buying my groceries. And like I said, it's a nice shopping center, nice place I was at. And I'm in line and everybody from me, every aisle was, or every lane was open, and it was backed up. And I noticed that everybody was giving that card. Everybody, I mean, they had these huge baskets, and I realized it was the first of the month. But then I'm looking over, and there's a couple beside me. This guy was built like a brick house. I mean, he had muscles all over him. He was in a little tank top and pair of shorts and really nice Nike shoes, and she was standing there, and she was all in shape, and it looked like they just came from a fitness program. I mean, she was in the spandex, and they were both physically fit. And they go up in front of me, and they pay with that card. Fraud. Absolute 100% of all it is fraud. There's fraud all through that. When I got up there to pay cash, lady like to die. I don't think she's seen it ring bill sometime. She didn't realize you could still pay groceries for cash. Or buy groceries with cash. And I'm just saying that because it's not just in one area, it's all over the place. And there you go to the fact that we shouldn't be supporting those that won't work. They're spending their money someplace.
You know, what I found interesting about this video is that the congressman, he wasn't alarmed at the fact that, according to him, everyone in the store was using food stamps. That would alarm me if I went to a grocery store and everybody was using food stamps. He was alarmed by the fact that the folks in front of him didn't look a certain way. To this congressman, people who use food stamps, SNAP as it's known now, are supposed to look a certain way. They're supposed to act a certain way, perhaps be in certain places. As he mentioned several times, that he was in a really nice part of town at a really nice shopping center. This congressman and so many Americans, they put conditions on the people that we think deserve our help and the help of our government. We want them to act a certain way. We want them to be in certain places. We want them to look a certain way. We're quick to vilify the poor, and we're quick to judge people who need our assistance. We've created a culture of conditional compassion. But that's not the story of America, nor is it the story of cities like Toledo. After all, on our Statue of Liberty, we ask to be given the tired, the poor, the huddled masses yearning to breathe free. And let's not forget about one of Toledo's greatest mayors, Sam Golden Rule Jones, who preached policies of compassion and generosity, not just in his politics, but in his own business. In the late 1800s, he was giving people paid vacations, paid week vacations. And he implemented a 40-hour work week in the late 1800s. You know, the concept of unconditional compassion is very familiar to me and to my family, and let me tell you our story. We came to Toledo in 1988. My mom and dad had lived in Huntsville, Alabama since 1979 and had my brother, sister, and me there. We had a good life in Alabama. My father was a pipe fitter and a plumber for the Tennessee Valley Authority, and my mom, who's a nurse by trade, stayed at home to care for us kids. You know, one of my fondest memories of as a child growing up in Alabama was this huge garden that my mother had in our backyard. It was colorful and full of all kinds of fruits and vegetables, watermelon and green beans and tomato, and everything was planted in this sweet red clay. And I know it was sweet because I used to eat it by the handfuls. We had a really good life there. But then my father lost his job, and he looked for jobs in Huntsville and the surrounding area for several months to no avail. So with the encouragement of our friends and some of our family that we had here in Toledo, we moved up north. They said there'll be more opportunities here. My parents packed everything they could into our brown station wagon, put us 3 kids in there, and we hit I-75 north. When we first arrived here, we lived in a church parsonage. It was originally supposed to be a temporary fix when my father looked for work, but things didn't go exactly as planned. First, my mother got pregnant. And, you know, she would probably take exception with the way I just said that because it relieves my father of any culpability like she did it on her own. But, you know, for a family of 5, there were 3 young kids, all under the age of 8. Having another baby was really, really tough. We were living off of my father's unemployment. Then there was never enough food. We didn't starve, but there were certainly days where we had to pick and choose which meals we wanted to have. We got by on church dinners and the generosity of our friends and neighbors that would bring us bags of groceries. My parents initially resisted applying for food stamps. After all, they were homeowners. My mother is a college graduate, had lived all over the world. My father is a proud Marine veteran, and veterans and Marines don't take handouts. But the day my mother cried tears of joy because my sister won a giant squash at the farmer's market right up the street was a turning point, and we applied for food stamps. Then our car broke down, our brown station wagon, and it cost too much to get fixed, so my father decided to sell it to the junkyard. We took the bus until a member of our church gave us their old car. And this car was so old and so broke down, there was a hole this big in the back seat. We could literally stick our feet in the bottom of this car and hit the floor. My father had to glue a piece of plywood there to keep us from sticking our feet through. It was kind of like a backup plan. If we ran out of gas, we could just like pedal like the Flintstones. And then it took my father a really long time to find a job. Every day he would get up in the morning, pack his lunch, and go look for work. He never wanted us to see him sitting at home in the day. I still remember the painful look of disappointment on my father's face when he would come home and not have found permanent work. As a man who prided himself in being able to take care of his family's every need, it broke his heart to know that he was doing everything he possibly could to find a job, but he just wasn't getting that break. For over 11 months, my family lived off of my father's unemployment and the sporadic jobs that he can get a couple days at a time. But then my father found a job at Libby Glass. We moved out of the church parsonage to a house on East Stryker right by Woodward High School. My mother replanted her garden and I stopped eating dirt. We got another station wagon. This time it had a wood panel on the side. I don't know whose idea it was to have wood panels on cars, but we had one. And we no longer needed food stamps. A few years later, my father got a better job at Ford Motor Company. We bought a house in West Toledo. We went to private schools. When we lived on East Stryker, my parents didn't want to send us to public schools and we couldn't afford private ones, and so she homeschooled us. But once we moved to that house in West Toledo, we were able to go to private schools. We got another car. My mom got the obligatory mom SUV. We went to college, all of us, my parents included. And today we have my siblings are all grown. We're living on our own, successful adults. My father's just a few years away from retirement. I was going to say from unemployment, but from retirement. And my mom is working on her dissertation. We truly live the American dream right here in Toledo. I wonder now, though, if my family moved to Toledo in 2013 instead of 1988, if our story would still be true. Would people have as much compassion as they did then? Would the government assistance we relied on still be available to us? You know, we were able to live the American dream for 2 reasons: the unconditional compassion of our friends and family and the assistance of our government. Our friends and family, they literally gave us life. They gave us money, they gave us food, they gave us clothing. They could have easily judged us and said, you know what, James, my father, there's no way it's taking you 11 months to find a job. You're just being lazy. I don't believe you. I'm gonna help you out one time. And then the next time I want you to go over to McDonald's and I want you to get a job there because there are plenty of people who are hiring here in Toledo. Sure, he could have. He could have gone to McDonald's and gotten a job. But it wasn't going to support a family of 6, nor would it have allowed him to look for a job that gave him the dignity that he deserved and allow him to use the skills that he had worked so hard to attain. They could have criticized my mother and said, Nancy, you're a nurse. I don't understand why you don't put your kids in whatever daycare you can afford, send them to the school up the street and call it a day. And she could have. But my mother knew the needs that our family had, and she knew the goals that she had for her children, and that it could only be attained if we had a quality and great education. She couldn't afford it, so she did it herself. You know, the government assistance that we were on provided us a safety net that our friend's charity couldn't extend to. When we thought we weren't going to have enough food stamps made sure my family ate. When we didn't have a car, the Tartar bus let us get around Toledo. When we needed checkups, we went for free checkups at the health department. We went to the public library 2 or 3 times a week. We watched PBS, which is publicly funded, to learn Spanish from a show called Pedro Pepe. And we went to the Toledo Zoo every single Monday before 10 a.m. I could still give you guys a tour there. You know, I really worry about the poor in our country. The debate around the poor breaks my heart. I wonder if we have enough compassion as a community to help a family in need. I wonder if the government assistance that my family relied so heavily on, is it still enough? You know, when you leave here today, I want you to do 2 things. I want you to resist the urge to judge those that have fallen on hard times. And I want you to give freely to the people that you care about. Know that needing the help of your family and your government is not a condition that most aspire to. Are there people that take advantage of others' generosity? Surely. But it can never be a reason for us to turn our backs on our friends and our neighbors. When I reimagine Toledo, I imagine a place where living the American dream is the norm and not the exception. I imagine a place that if I know I fell on hard times, I could go to my neighbor and ask for help, and they would be there for me. And I imagine a Toledo that has policies in place to help people when their need is the greatest, and I won't be vilified for that. Toledo, our compassion is only, our city is only as strong as our compassion is deep. And if we want Toledo to grow, if we want our children to have the opportunities that we have, if you want Toledo to be the city that folks imagined it to be, the historian that talked about, Ella P. Stewart, they worked so hard to have a city like Toledo. It starts with compassion. No judgment, just unconditional compassion. Thank you.